Welcome, everybody, to a special episode of 8192 The Truth. This is Joel D. Supernaw, and I'm going solo tonight. Brother Sin could not join us. I uh, I want to tell you how hard it is to. There's a lot of things we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to have some fun. Actually, we're just going to talk. But Joe Rogan, who is the podcast king. Now, there may have been some people like Chris Jericho before Joe Rogan, but Joe Rogan, man, he does he do 2 3 hours a day? And now he has another just an MMA related podcast. Now, granted, he is the King Kong of the podcast world, and he can get anybody he wants on his show. But just word for word, second for second, man, he does an incredible amount of content on his own each week. I wanted a podcast tonight, and I had some topics to talk about. But a lot of the fans tell me, "Hey, I love it when you go longer." Well, it's hard to talk for an hour. I mean, if you think about it. But I wrote down some things that I wanted to talk about, and I asked some of the fans, "Hey, what are some topics?" And I have been the last few days really digging into how perspective is so important. It's just so important, and to have a solid percep- perspective of things, and not be so reactive. Uh, I have been on a journey. I have been out here since May 29th, and I decided, and I have had a wonderful time out here. Have done very well. I talk about I talk about failure being part of the process, and at the end of the day, I'll be going home shortly. I'll be going back to Portland to start a new chapter of my life, and I did not reach all my goals, but boy, did I reach a lot of them. I really reached a lot of them, and quite frankly, I had so much perspective when I got here. I had a big chip on my shoulder, and I was driven with success. I started making a bunch of money with success, or not even success. It's so hard to say money's success. Money feeds you, and the more money you make, the more food you get. Whether that food is a cool membership or a trip to Chicago or this, that, and the other with Lad, money is food. And one of the things that that I lost was that perspective. And as I go back to Portland for the next few days, week or so, I'm really going to spend a lot of time on perspective and how important it is. It is just so important. It's easy. It's easy to turn on the television and watch a great story about a young boy, and I'm going to talk about Jack Strong here in a second. The young boy that was in Lad School, uh, uh, Jack Cash Rytel, who the year younger than Lad, and last spring he went to school, did his homework, went home, and woke up in the middle of the night paralyzed. Now I'm gonna talk about him in a second, but when something strong like that happens in your life, it's so hard to see it on the television. I mean, you can get inspired by it, and it can move you, but if you have too much food, if you have too much food around you, you're going to lose track of that. And I don't know what the answer is. I think the answer is to write it down, because quite frankly, I lost quite a bit of perspective, and humility. Things didn't uh, weren't going the way that I wanted them to, and I had decided to leave. So I I had one wheel out. I had one foot out the door, and quite frankly, I lost perspective, and my plan got altered because, really truly, because I lost perspective. You know, there's a lot of different dynamics to it, but at the end of the day, I lost perspective, and it is something that I really want to get back. I need to get back, and it's so easy. It's I have it all around me. My brother is in the next room, and he's sleeping, and he has an entire uh, bevy of perspective that I've been living right next to, and if I needed to draw on it every day, I should. Lad's always been good with giving me perspective, but when you're around something really special, you lose track of how special it is. Eric Dabosky, I asked him, as a shout out for you, Eric, fan of the show. I asked him for one of his topics, and his topic was, how does my past affect my present? I've talked about this a lot, whether it was on this show or Chael's show. You're welcome. Well, I mean, you can't escape it. I'm in a very similar position now, that now I'm going back to Portland, and I committed a crime in 2006. It was mortgage fraud, and now we're coming up on 12 years, and it still affects my life. I it's hard for me to get a place to live. It's hard for me to get a job. It it, it it's never going to go away. How does that affect my life? Well, it affects my life in both a negative and positive way. It affects my life in a negative way for what I want right now. I want that housing. I have all the money for you to give you for your housing, but when you run those numbers up, uh, it may not say that you can rent to me. I want that job that I'm qualified for, but and you want to give me, but you can't give me because of my record, and that's where it hurts me. That's where it hurts me. But where it helps me is this exact situation I'm going through right now. Plans changed Tuesday at 10:30 in the morning. And not one single time. I had a plan. I had a plan. I talked about it. Okay, I'll come back here and grind for 70 days, and boom, I'll come back to Portland. Gave that my word. Well, that 70 days turned out to be a lot shorter, and it was unexpected, and it would not have been my number one choice. But there hasn't been one single time where I said, "Oh man, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to da 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 da." I've lived through a lot. A lot of people have had a lot rougher road than I am, but we're talking about how my past affects my future or my present. And there was power in that. There is power in that. There's power in knowing, what, I'm going to be all right. I'm going to be just fine. I'm going to be just fine. I'm a very capable person, and it's okay. One of the positive things that my past has taught me is I hate victims, and I hate being one. I hate being one. Okay, and I can catch myself when I'm doing it. And today, this is kind of rolling perspective into uh, Eric's topic. I was a little bit drained, kind of looking at all the things that I've accomplished out here, which is a lot. Okay, I've done very, very well out here. But all I could think about was all of the things that I wanted to do. All of the things that I wanted to do, and it's time to go now. I did not accomplish those. And I started thinking about Jake Smith and Jack Strong. Jake Smith is fighting in 155-pound division, 156 pounds. He made that weight today. He is fighting in Bellator tomorrow. He is on the main card. So you want to talk about a fighter? You want to talk about a great story? It's that kid. Okay, he's paid his dues. He's worked whatever job that he could work to fuel the dream of being a champion, being a world champion. He wants to be a world champion. I believe he can, because he doesn't know how much time he has, but I do, in terms of his career. Now he sits in that pocket and fights, but he can wrestle. He's part of a great team. But anyway, Jake, at 155 pounds, he's cut down from 170. I think he started out at like 205 pounds. He might have been as big as 230 pounds. Well, got to know Jake through Chael, and Jake actually being Chael's number one training partner. They go to Curtis Crawford's gym 2 nights a week. They used to do a night a week at Chael's house, and then during the Gracie Baja practice, they're not teamed up. They're teamed up with other people at different weights. But Jake's been fighting Chael nonstop for 3 years, maybe even a little bit longer. And those guys fight. He's got, he's a fighter. He's gonna go out and lay it on the line tomorrow. Well, when Jack Cash Rytel, the young boy that that I named Jack Strong, um, this is a young boy, 13 years old, goes to school, perfectly healthy kid, great kid, very nice. Nothing wrong with him, physically fine. He goes home, and in the middle of the night, he's paralyzed from the neck down. And now he's made an amazing recovery, but he still has a long, long, long battle ahead of him. Where he is right now is absolutely amazing. When I went down to see Jack, in the hospital the first time, at the Children's Hospital in Portland, he could only move his neck. And if you guys follow the show, you know that I ran him up and down the hallway, and he was a bobblehead. And now he's going skiing, he's pushing weights, he's walking, but he's still battling. Well, anyway, within a couple weeks, uh, Jake started going down to the hospital with me, and he started doing this workout in the dojo. Uh, Jake's, I think, two fights ago, he had this out and out war. I mean, just an incredible fight. He won. He was beat. He was beat up really good. Well, he sent Jack his gloves, and that was really, really cool. Well, today Jake is, it's weigh-in day, and I feel like crying, actually, and I might shed a tear. I said, how was the weight? Because it's a really, really tough pull. And he said, I was fine. I had the Jack Strong bracelets on the whole time. So when he was cutting that weight, when he was in that spot of, there's no way to really truly explain what it's like to be completely dehydrated and still need to lose 5 more pounds, still need to lose 3 more pounds, to have there's there if you cut a lot of weight, there's never an easy pound. Well, the last one's always the toughest, and I know what that meant. I know that when he was in that spot where he just wanted to go, get out of the sauna or do whatever he was doing. He looked at those bracelets. He looked at Strong's bracelet, and he got perspective, and it helped him. It helped him get through. And Jake's another amazing fighter. I believe, I could be wrong, but Tyree Fortune is also making his Bellator debut. I think he's undefeated. I think he's like 18 or 19 or 22-0. He's 205-pounder. Another kid out of Gracie Baja. I believe he's making that debut tomorrow. So I want to throw a shout out to him. Um, as I was going through my phone and asking people, hey, do you have any topics? Uh, I seen a message from my buddy Chris Wilson, and Chris Wilson, he passed away, a couple years ago. He was a multiple-time Oregon All-Star, state champ. Around my age, he was, multiple-time freestyle and Greco-Roman All-American, great wrestler. Chris had a John Smith shot. John Smith was the one that stole that outside single from Russians, and Chris Wilson picked it up. Chael did a version of that, but I seen a message from him, and it must have been, how messengers on Facebook for us old people are. Uh, he asked me, hey, how was the trip? Which means, I've spent my life on Facebook posting lad's next adventure. And he was, how was the trip? It was a great time. Looked like a great time. And I said, yup, and his response was, yup, that's all you have for such a great trip? You need to get a little bit more enthusiasm. He spelled enthusiasm way wrong. But it made me think about Chris. Chris got his life taken away from him out of the blue with some, crazy liver disease, just like Travis West. And hopefully these things, and podcasts are sometimes they are healing. You can learn from them. Sometimes the easiest thing to do is just talk about, a sport or MMA or somebody in the news. But to throw a real topic out there and actually talk about it and make it make sense, that's a little bit different. So I know that I'm going to go back and listen to this. Hopefully, when I finish it up, there's a lot more for me. But yeah, tune in for Jake Smith. Keep your heads up for Jack Strong. Chris Wilson, I miss you. One of the forgotten members, yeah, the forgotten patriarch, truly, of Team Quest is a gentleman named Chris Lausche. And the way, Chris was a sider. Now he wrestled in college. He was second in the state, but Chris wasn't a very good wrestler. But boy, was he tough. And he was good, solid people. He was great, solid people. He didn't think anybody was better than him. He could meet the most famous person in the world. He'd pull up next to him, say, "How you doing?" Put a chew in his mouth and drink his beer, and everybody gravitated to his energy. Well, uh, I was a sales manager at a car dealership. I was only in the business 4 years at the time, but I was managing about 14 people, and I was doing man, I was doing 100 cars a month. I mean, that again, times changed. You know, this is back in, '99, and I, as soon as I got in the car business, I, sold a bunch of cars and then became a closer, and then got into finance. It was all really really easy for me because a I had personality, and B, the dynamics. There's not that, I'm a number person. There's not that many different things that go into a car dealership. Now, granted, if hindsight was 2020, I would have waited a few years before I started a car dealership. But anyway, I was at this car dealership um, called H&H, and man, I was doing, jeez, I was desking. I was straight sales, so I still had the close one, but I was desking and financing and getting them bought and funded. I mean, just a tremendous amount of work. 80 to 90 deals a month, and 60 of them were secondary finance. Was just, oh god, it's the worst. It's people with bad credit, and that don't. It's a tough market, but I seen the dynamics of man. I was like, God, if these idiots can do 100 cars, and I got to be able to do this. And Chris, um, he hated being a sider. He was like, man, I mean, God, you make all sorts of money. I got to work so hard to make, $6 grand a month. Here you are making, $8 grand a month. And I was like, yeah, I might not be, you know, breaking my back, but trust me, I'm breaking my back. The wheels don't ever stop spinning. So we decided, okay, we're going to start a car dealership. I didn't have any money. Chris had uh, good credit, and that during that time, college buddy of ours, Matt Lindland, was going through the Olympic trials to become a an Olympian, and I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on that. So we decide, okay, three college buddies will, you know, Matt takes a silver medal at the Olympics. We'll go ahead and put his name on the sign, call it Matt Lindland's USA Auto, thinking think thinking that was going to do anything. Chris got a $20,000 credit line, and he sided the building. Now that same siding is on that Team Quest building right now in Portland, and that allowed us 3 months. So we didn't have to pay rent for 3 months, and we signed a 2 or 3 year lease, when a corporate lease, whatever it was. It was horrible. It, triple net. Oh god, 6 grand a month, and we didn't make any. Man, we didn't sell any cars for oh man, 2.5, 2 months, 2.5 months. I mean, just when it was about ready to yeah. I remember actually applying for other jobs, and it was hard, and I was there 7 days a week, and you this was before that we put the mats in the back. Well, Chris, it was his credit line that started. We got $60,000 from Pat Sonnen. He gave that to us in cars, which was a brilliant move on his part. Um, and we started our business. Well, once we started doing well, we did very very well. We did very very well, and the reason we did was because I was great at spending money, and Chris was great at holding on to it. I mean, we had good times, and this, that, and other, but it was 100% uh, Chris's say so on everything. You know, without him getting the first 20 grand, we have nothing. So Chris and Chris had control of the checkbook, because you don't want to give Godfather control of a checkbook, or he'll spend every dollar in it. But Chris had the final say so. So when Rick Franklin called me to Rick Franklin, not Rich Franklin, but Rick Franklin, an attorney friend of Randy's and mine, in Chales, just a great guy, salt of the earth. When he called me and said, "Hey, Gresham High School's got some mats. Randy needs a place to train. Let's roll them out in the back of the dealership." Chris was at the auction. Okay, I said, "Yeah, let's go." Because what's that? What it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. That was my thinking, and I said, let's go. Let's get him down before he gets there. So we had just me and it was me and Randy, and for whatever reason I don't think Matt was there that day, because he would have been there. I would have remembered him being there. I just remember Randy being there. Maybe he was out getting something else for the dealership. But anyway, we just gotten the mats down on the back bay of the dealership in this old tin building that Chris cited, and we have this big, huge sliding door to get into that back part, and Chris pulls it open, and I see him hugging that checkbook like he always did. He always had it like he was holding how the people hold babies wrong. He always had that checkbook like he was holding the baby. And I said, "Hey, Randy and Matt need a place to train. We rolled out the mats." He was like, "Awesome." Puts his checkbook down, runs out to me. Now I'm two I'm 260 at the time. It's not a very good 260. It's never a good 260, but it's a not trained up, not doing anything 260. Not it's a bad 260. But Chris only weighs he might weigh 200 pounds, but he should be 165, maybe 170. He grabs an underhook. Now my move's a foot sweep. That's my move. I can count on two hands the times somebody's actually foot swept me since I actually learned from the great Larry Kristoff. It's hard to foot sweep a foot sweeper. It just is. Um, well, sure shitting. He foot sweeps me, and I flat back on those mats. And oh man, it knocks all the wind out of me. And by the time Chris gets through that, by the time I get up, he's gone. He's gone. And boy, he made sure if I was ever in that wrestling room, he wasn't, because he got me. And for the next 2 years or year and a half, however long it was, I never got him back. Chris ended up dying December 20th of 2002. About 6 months before that is when we actually made, or 8 months before that is when we actually made Team Quest be a business. Kind of Robert Follis took it over, but people credit me. People credit me a lot for, hey, you started Team Quest. I didn't start Team Quest. I was instrumental in Team Quest being in the back of my car dealership. Very, very instrumental. But without Chris Lausche says no, that changes a lot of history. It truly, truly changes a lot of history. It's amazing how many people came through the back bay of that car dealership when it was just a car dealership. So without Chris Lausche, and it's Lausche. Without him, he could have said, "No, man, we ain't doing that." We put a bunch of money into that room. I mean, tons of it. Tons of money into it. A lot of money into that dealership. And if it wasn't for Chris, none of that would have ever happened. And I'm going to talk about Chris because, again, I lose perspective because I mean, this is my best friend. He's been gone since December 20th of 2002. Died on the way to our Christmas party in a Suburban that I bought for him. Took me a long time to get over that. And man, Chris was a great guy. Now, as the dealership starts doing better, one of the things that I would do is I hated wholesalers. Wholesalers back in the day, they're kind of few and far between now. The business has changed quite a bit, but back then, you could buy a $500 car, you could buy a $700 car that ran and drove, and you could sell it for 1,300 bucks. That's not a retail deal. That's a wholesale deal. I never enjoyed it. Never wanted to do it. It's a huge headache. But there's all sorts of wholesalers, i.e., gypsies, that like to do it. Well, I wouldn't ever sell it to them. I would stack all of the cars that were worth 500 to 8 300 to 500 to $800. Again, this is back in the early 2000s. I would stack them in the back of the dealership, which is this big open space. There was 3 times as much room behind the dealership as parking space in the front. And then I would make the wholesalers give, if you bought one, you bought them all. Buy one, you buy it all. And we would use that money to basically blow in Vegas. Well, one of the times, again, because Chris he's in control of the money, or most of it. Um, One of the times we go there, and it's when we were coming up, because real quick we moved from the little rooms at the MGM, the 2 bed, the basic room to the MGM, to the big room at the end of the hall. I mean, very very quick. So this was one of our first trips there, and Chris came in, and I had whatever, I had $1,000, fun money. He had whatever he had. And then we had we had the money we were going to bet on the guys, because our guys are going to win, and that's the best bet in town. Matt and Randy, if we're there, one of those guys are fighting, so we're going to bet on them. Um, so Lausche goes out and just gets blistered. He just gets blistered, and he's put the rest of the money in the safe. Well, I go to I go down on the floor, and I lose all my money. And at the time I'm dry as a judge. I'm not drinking. I go blow my G, and I know there's money in that safe. I know there's money in that safe. So whatever the combo was, I cracked it. I mean, I forgot what it was, but it was probably his wife's birthday or something, the Raiders, or anyway. I cracked the code, and I grab $300, and I go to the floor, and I go on a run. Uh, I win. He's out drinking for a while. I win a couple things in the sports book. Pick up a 300 or 400 bucks on the blackjack table. I get it all back. I get my G plus some back, and I go and I stick that money. I stick that money back into the safe. I'm clean, man. I'm clean. I'm paid back. He comes home drunker. He comes back to the room drunker than 1,000, and he's like, "You got the safe," and I'm like, "No, man, money's in the safe." You got the safe. And I was like, "No, man, but no, all the money's there." He just kept saying, "You got in the safe," and then he goes, I'm like, I'm trying to talk to him. If you ever talk to somebody that's damn near blackout, I've been there plenty of times. It's a different experience. So he goes and he goes and brushes his teeth, and he's getting ready to crash into bed, and he's got toothpaste all over his face. And I'm like, Lausche, I'm like, where? And Lausche was one of those guys that you called him by his last name. I don't know why. Um, so I said, Lausche, where's everybody at? Where's your friends? He's like, friends? I got no friends. And he's got he's got all this toothpaste on the side of his mouth. So I grab, one of those hotel towels, and I wipe his face. And he looks at, he's one-eyed at this time. He looks at me and he says, "All right, you're my friend." So anyway, Chris got, he busted me. I was clean. I was a clean burglar on that caper. And he still caught me, but because he was because he was, blackout drunk. He didn't remember that the next day. He didn't remember that the next day. So only drunk Chris knew that I broke the code and got in a safe. Um, so Lausche was the he was very, very stubborn, and part of his success, and he was a successful cider. He got in the car business and never been in the car business. He was successful, and one of the traits that he had is he was just so goddamn stubborn. Um, well, a buddy of ours, Brian Fotef, they're in uh, what is that? Damn, what's it called? Bandon, Oregon, which is about a 3.5 hour drive in Bandon, Oregon. They went golfing. It's a beautiful resort, and Brian needs Chris. Now, Chris wants to go. He's ready to go home. He's done all his partying. He's ready to go home. It's nighttime, and Brian wants to go have another beer real quick, or he actually probably wanted to smoke a joint. Okay, to tell you the truth, yeah, he wanted to go smoke a joint. So Chris left him. Chris, instead of waiting 5 minutes, Chris drove 3.5 hours back home through the rain instead of waiting for him. The last Lausche story I would tell you about, and this is a good one. Man, we used to fight like brothers. We'd yell and scream at each other. Just, man, I mean, just like he was my best friend. I mean, we would yell. I mean, we'd get into it. Well, the way the dealership was, the way the business office was, is there you would go back through a small hallway, and on the right side there was a door into one side of the office, and then there was like a 4 foot, yeah, like a 4.5 foot wall with a ledge on it that divided the office. And for whatever reason, if you where I used to sit on the other side, you would take a left, and that particular door, and these were flimsy, flimsy, flimsy doors. That door opened the wrong way. So instead of it how a door should go when you go through a door, it should go it should push in and not pull out. So that door was backwards, and again the door the door Thero, Chael's 2.5-year-old son, 3-year-old son, he could probably kick that door down. I mean, it wasn't made of nothing. And me and him get in a fight. We get in a fight. He's yelling and screaming, "I hate you. We're done." Whatever it was, whatever it was, it was bad. But so he slams the door, but he forgot the checkbook. So he gets to his car, and he's he's forgot the checkbook. So when he comes back, he's got to go through the door, and I've now locked the door, so he can't get out. And so he's he's all frustrated, and instead of just unlocking it, he kicks it in. But it takes him like four kicks to kick this door in, and he finally gets it in. And by this time, I forgot what we were fighting about. I'm rolling. He's still mad. He's still madder than a wet hen. And he finally kicks that thing in, and he leaves victorious. And one of the things, we were there for probably a year and a half longer after Chris passed away. I never fixed that door because it always it always made me think about just how mad he was, and then he finally kicked that in. So there's a couple stories about the forgotten member that is very, very responsible for Team Quest, and you've never heard his name before. You should have. His name is Christopher David Lausche. My son Lad is named after him. Lad's name was going to be uh, Peyton Lad Supernaw, except Chris had a baby girl before I got to the pump, and they named her Peyton. So he actually apologized to me for that. That actually took Peyton out of the loop. So Lad he was still going to be Lad Peyton, and then Chris passed away, so Lad became Lad Christopher Supernaw. So that's the story about him, and I'll finish up with Sam Stevenson. Sam Stevenson is a listener of the show. Sam gets a shout out, and he wanted to know why. He wanted to know why you're doing this podcast. Why did you want to do it? Why are you doing it? The why. He wanted to know the why. Well, I've told this story a little bit, but in truth, I started going to. I didn't even know what a podcast was when Chael was like, "Hey, I need a ride, pick me up," blah 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 blah, and so we drive downtown, and he did his first podcast. Might have been his second, I don't know. Um, and then I started going with Chael, and then one thing led to another, and I got on his show. Um, I thought that you know what the position I had with that show. I mean, me and Chael had some incredible banter, but it could have been a lot better. It could have been a lot better because, in truth, I'm a great communicator. I'm a great storyteller. Yeah, I don't talk like you. Everything's not right. I make up words. I made up Billy Rabbit last night. Billy Rabbit's funny. Um, but I wanted to put a voice out there for somebody like myself. And it doesn't matter because if you're not if you're not super successful, and even if you are, again, it doesn't mean you're the happiest person in the world. I'll tell you that. I mean, I will tell you that there is dysfunction all the way across the board. But for people like me that uh, are within a struggle, that want to get better, that can do great things, even though everybody around us tells us we're done. Our time, our time is over. I'll give you a quick example. Again, I'm 51. Next year's going to be 52. That's crazy. It wasn't. I guarantee there wasn't a 51-year-old working out like I did this morning. I went 14 minutes in red. Go 14 minutes at 90% over the course of an hour, and see how that feels. Especially when you've been training for a while and it takes you a while to get there. But anyway, through I've had the same email forever. I've had the same email forever, and so I get diluted with. I get 500 emails a day or something ridiculous. Maybe not 500, but 50. 50 feels like 500 when none of them are important. I need to get one of those whatever blockers. I'm a little behind. I'm old school. I'm old school is what one of the hiring managers told me this week, and it did not bother me a bit. Uh, but it was for a retirement home, a retirement condo, and it started 55 years and up. It said 55 years and up. So what that means, and this is the why. That is the why. What that means is society says you're done at 55. You need to go out to pasture. You need to hang out with a bunch of 55-year-old and up and watch life go by. And I'm like, no. No, you don't have to do that. I, I I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it tomorrow. I'm not going to do it the next day. I'm not going to do it when I'm 55. I'm probably not going to do it when I'm 65. I'm going to run. I'm going to run as long and as hard as I can. And in the meantime, I'm going to try to get better because I am getting smarter with age. I am getting smarter with age. I'm gonna take from this 7.5 month journey that I've had here. Is that right? 6, 7, no, 7, 7 on the nut, a little bit below 7. Actually, it'll be 7 on the nut probably when I get back. Uh, I'm going to take a lot of lessons. And the biggest lesson I'm going to take is keep fighting, keep slugging it out, and don't let anybody tell you you can't. Don't let anybody tell you you can't. That's the why. And I'm bad enough to tell you I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. So I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. I appreciate Eric DeBoski. I appreciate Sam Stevenson. Sam came through with the Y at the end. I will give a shout out to, I'm going to butcher her name, Alana Danielle. She's a huge, huge, huge MMA fan. So she wanted to hear about Cyborg Nunez, Ferguson, Khabib. Those are just, those are topics that we can talk about, on more with Kevin or more when we're talking about MMA. I kind of wanted to step outside of the box a little bit and just be real with you for a second. My journey here in Kansas City is coming to an end, and a new journey will be starting back in Portland, Oregon. I can't wait. Again, perspective is amazing. I had Ladd the first. I missed him for 21 days, and then I had him for 60 days out here. And then he stayed 3 more weeks. So I actually had Ladd almost half of the time I've been here, but that other half has just been too hard, and it's time to go back. And the universe has opened up different doors for me, and I'm going back a lot better, a lot stronger, and a lot smarter. And I'm bringing all you with me. You guys weren't with me before. Might have been with me at Chael's show, but I know we got a lot of new listeners, and I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate Brother Sin, and yeah, that's it, guys. Just remember, perspective's everything. Don't be a pussy. Wrestling. Jay Churko. Okay, perfect. Churko in at the bell. Jay Churko said wrestling. What's so cool about Jay Churko saying that is he wasn't even a wrestling fan before me and Chael started talking about wrestling on the podcast. So thank you, Jay. I've been meaning to give a shout out to Seth Gross, who wrestles for South Dakota. It's either South Dakota or South Dakota State. He's the number 1 ranked guy at 131 pounds. And then Bryce Meredith is the number 1 guy at 141 pounds. They're in the same conference. Seth went up to wrestle him. Very, very, very few times in the middle of the season does that happen. It won't happen again this year for a super match. And they brought in 2,500 people in either Wyoming. He fought or he wrestled the number 1 guy at 141 pounds, which is, I believe it's Bryce Meredith. Again, you know me and my names. And Meredith won 4-2. But good for those guys, man. Good for those guys, and the build up to NCAA wrestling and how great wrestling really is. I mean, it's really, really tough sport. Builds a lot of character. Yeah, I guarantee the guys that put in 20 years of wrestling or whatever, they're not reading that 55-year-old send yourself out to pasture. It's not going to happen. So, yes, thank you, everybody. And Brother Sin will be back with me tomorrow or the next day. And onward and upward. Thanks, guys.